What's going on, everybody? It's the one and only Q here from Retro Q Gaming, back keeping it safe as always, because, well, everything's got to wear a hood, am I right? But here we are with our 64th episode of our Quack experimental podcast. Of course, we are getting closer to the ever most important number. Well, I can't spoil it just yet because, well, that would take some of the fun away, wouldn't it? But we'll get straight into it anyway with our 64th one here. Nice things to talk about this week. Some positive, some negative, some... Well, you be the judge for yourself. But anyway, we will start off with the announcement of a new mini console from SEGA. Now, this one you might be wondering, oh, they're going to do a Master System Mini, or could it be the amazing Sega Saturn Mini, or the Dreamcast Mini, or something like that. But no, this is a very, very different one, and it's something that's been done by one other company, possibly two, depending on how you look at it. But, well, this one is a little bit more important, because Sega have announced the Astro City Mini. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's based on the iconic Sega arcade Astro City cabinet, which, I mean, I'm far too lazy to put a picture of it in here, but if you were to quickly Google it and you've ever been in an arcade in the last 20 odd years, you know the one. It's the generic Sega interchangeable one that was really popular around the Dreamcast era, a little bit before, and pretty much ever since. So that's pretty cool. Now, with the Astro City Mini, of course, it's going to look like that. Well, I can't really say it's going to feel like that or anything, but we do have a little bit of details on it. We don't have everything just yet, but we can talk a little bit about it. So it will have 36 arcade games. That's, of course, a very big, important one, because they all are arcade games, and essentially, I can't even call them arcade ports, because they are the actual proper arcade games. Now, remember I said that this hadn't really been tried properly, except maybe, I guess you could say once, possibly even twice by other companies. That was more so aimed at Capcom and their whole home arcade thing as well, the one I have in the stream before. And of course, there's the Neo Geo small version of this that would be basically very, very similar to this Astro City Mini Cab. Now, of course, there is one important thing to note. In the case of the Neo Geo thing, practically every game on it was a fighter. That's a bit of an issue. But anyway, back to the Astro City Mini. So we do have some games to talk about, which is basically just the announcement of a couple of them so far. Not all 36 have been listed just yet, but we do have the arcade versions of Alien Syndrome, Alien Storm, Golden Axe, Golden Axe The Revenge of Death Adder, Columns 2, Dark Edge, Puzzle and Action, is that Tant R? Virtua Fighter, Fantasy Zone, and Altered Beast. Of course, it is the arcade version of Altered Beast, which is the least shit version. I have never got the appeal of Altered Beast myself, but it's the Altered Beast on the arcade is the best version of it. Now, importantly enough, because this is going to be the little mini arcade cabinet with the built-in buttons and built-in stick and built-in screen and all, it does also have a HDMI output, so you can play it out on a TV or a monitor or something along those lines. It's unconfirmed if you can still sit the small little cabinet and use that as a controller if you're doing HDMI out, or that you may possibly be forced to buy one of the USB controllers that will be sold separately for it. There's two USB ports on the system. Of course, they are for both 1 and 2 player controllers. 2 different types of controllers will be available. We don't have a picture of one just yet. We do have of the other. It is, well, it's kind of like a standard controller, basically. It's got like the 6 buttons in the arcade placement, or the Mega Drive placement. You could even go along the lines of, if you want to go with the 6-button version, and your usual little D-pad style on there as well. Or, of course, there will be a separate arcade stick, like a USB arcade stick version, available as well, if that's what you prefer. Now, of course, there's micro USB included for power and a headphone jack in there as well. So currently we don't have the entire list of all the games, and on top of all of that, it's currently only announced for a Japanese release so far. I predict this will eventually change, of course, but currently it's going to be available at the end of 2020 for what will be the equivalent of roughly $120. So that's a bit of a That's a bit of a price yikes. I mean, I can't complain. I bought a TurboGrafx Mini and that cost me just over €100. Or I bought the Capcom Home Arcade and I think that cost me €230 or something along those lines. So far ago, I can't even remember it at this point. But overall, this is good. So this is, so far, we have, I believe it's 2, including Golden Axe to Revenge of Death Adder, arcade exclusives that had never been ported to home console. Think back on the Capcom version of this when they ported AVP, the Alien vs. Predator game, to this was the first official home release in a way. Now, we could see more stuff down the line, more arcade exclusives and all as well. So it's going to be interesting to see if what the rest of the games are, if we do get a Western release, and if there's any change in the lineup for Western release. Having said all that, I do have my eye on this. I'm very, very curious about it. But, personally, I have one preference that they would do something. They could make this 10 times the price, literally 10 times the price, and I would buy it. If it had all of these games included, and was a full-size cabinet. I would pay super exorbitant amounts for delivery to my home, import fees coming from Japan. Just put the EU versions of the ROMs or the US version of the ROMs, basically put them in English in some way, shape, and form. Put them on there, ship them to me, and I would pay literally 10 times the price for this directly from SEGA. But moving on from SEGA, we'll go on to everyone's little favourite indie darling studio, Platinum Games. And of course, that awful piece of shit game that should have stayed completely dead, The Wonderful 101. But specifically in this whole situation as well, we're going to talk about Kickstarter. Now, interestingly enough, the Kickstarter for this game did complete several months ago, and stuff was sent out, digital codes, physical codes, all of that as well. But there was a little bit of a problem when it came to certain people and certain backers. So UK-based backers were getting slapped in the face with import fees and extra VAT, which is VAT, value added tax. It's basically our sales tax for you Americans out there. It's just called this over here. Now, interestingly enough, this would go up to roughly £17 on fees alone, which was roughly, remember, roughly, depending on your pledge and all as well, close to or in around half of what you could have potentially pledged for the game. But not only did you already pledge something, pledge an amount, then get hit with all these extra fees and all as well. If you were getting, by the way, of course, this only applies to physical editions being imported and shipped into the country from Kickstarter. But not to mention all of that, but the game you could buy at retail, let alone on sale, cheaper, normally, outside of the Kickstarter backer, and earlier. Because some of these UK-based ones, and there's people all over the world, not just in the UK, but we're using the UK as the example here, that there was a significant delay, upwards of 2 months, or I should say up to including 2 months, delay post-retail launch of the game before these people who backed it got their money, or got their game. And then on top of it, their backer pledge cost more than the regular game did at retail. And then they're getting hit by all these fees and all as well, and have to wait 2 months. So there's one extra thing before we go on to the rest of this actual topic that is important to note here. Because remember, some people can argue, oh, well, they paid a little bit more money to make sure the game existed and all of this as well. You might remember, if you're not a Nintendo Switch fanboy, because they're the only ones that seem to completely disregard this, but Platinum Games actually came out afterwards and said, oh, well, we didn't need any of this money. This was just kind of to gauge interest and whatnot. But the game was developed and able to be published and ported and all of that already based on what we had. So their money in Kickstarter essentially was a scam and a lie. But anyway, back to the topic we're talking at hand here as well. So to make it even scummier, they entered damage control mode. Now, depending on how you want to look at this, there are technicalities and all involved here. So at first, or I shouldn't even say at first, but slightly after the start of the Kickstarter, They did technically include and add fees and taxes disclaimer to the FAQ, the frequently asked questions, when it came to the Kickstarter. But this was only added roughly a week after the Kickstarter started. And naturally, of course, that's when most people would jump in and spend their money and all that as well, and dump their money into the Kickstarter and back and all the stuff as well. Now, of course, remember, I do want to point out yet again one more time that Platinum Games pretty much scammed a lot of people out of this, because it wasn't to port like they claimed and all as well. So that is very, very important to note. Of course, there is another one as well. Do not support Kickstarter. I don't support Kickstarter in video games after I got fucked over on one of them, and I never will support a video game on Kickstarter again. I will use Kickstarter for certain select projects, but none of them will be video games. That is the important one to note, because, well, video game companies and people involved in video games are clearly not able to be trusted. We've seen that multiple times with Kickstarter now. Hell, we've seen it multiple times outside of Kickstarter as well. But also, don't support this studio, Platinum Games, and their shitty practices. Now, you can cry QQ, Bayonetta, wah, wah, wah. You can do that all you want. But you have to remember that you were clearly choosing to ignore a company's shitty practices and shady, underhanded means and behind-the-scenes deals and all that as well. Let me give you a couple of examples. The Wonderful 101, where they claimed they needed all this money to publish and port. And then after they got all the money, they said, oh, well, we didn't actually need any of that money to publish and port. So, yeah, that's a pretty big one as well. The damage control on it too. Scalebound is another great example, which ties also in with Nier, because they're both basically the same thing. And let's face it, Nier is, well, Nier. But on top of that, yes, they're all actually scum. All of them. Don't support any of them. Kickstarter for video games and Platinum Games and all any way, shape or form. And just a quick double reminder, or hell, you could even go with triple reminder at this point. Never use Kickstarter for video games. History has proven us all along and all wrong that this is not it, dog. But we can move on to something potentially a little bit more wholesome. There's a big potential in there, you'll see why. Because typically The Sims and The Sims 4, or any of The Sims really, are kind of wholesome games in a way. But when you factor in the fact that The Sims 4 is getting a reality TV show, well, we all know how reality TV is, and it starts to become a little bit less wholesome. Because yes, The Sims 4 is getting its own reality TV show. Now, it's starting next week on TBS, and it's going to be called The Sims Sparked. That's SPARK''D, not KED. So, yeah, a little bit weird in that way. Now, of course, you may be wondering, how the hell is The Sims 4 going to be a competitive TV show? Excellent question, because, let's face it, I needed to read about this, because if you hadn't given me the details, I would have been, you what, mate? But anyway. So basically, what's going to happen is the contestants will be given challenges, and they will have to work against the clock to complete these challenges. Now, they could be anything like something basic as get to the top level of your profession, or top level of a profession, or it could be something crazy like the old 100 baby challenge or something along those lines. It's very, very strange. Now, not only that, but they'll be awarded and judged based on the speed to completion, as well as the ability to tell unique stories and do unique ways of completing the tasks and accomplishing everything in the meantime and all as well. And this will all be done in front of a panel of judges who are mainly like producers and YouTubers and stuff like that. And these people will be gauging their method of doing things, their storytelling and everything. And they will be progressing and see who goes along from there. There will be 12 contestants, and over the course of this TV show, they will be competing for $100,000 cash prize at the end of it. But I never, ever, ever thought I would see the day where there were competitive Sims gameplay. And this is coming from someone who absolutely spent far, far too much time on The Sims 1, The Sims 2, completely fell off and didn't give a shit about The Sims 3, but has been slipping in and out of significant time with The Sims 4. And still, I never saw it coming. Now, I don't even know why I'm making this next one a topic, but I apparently am. Because, well, people have been stupid around the internet, and naturally I have to talk about something like that. Next gen box design. Now, we're not talking the design of the physical console boxes or the physical console units. We are talking about the box game design. That's right. I don't have one close, but you know what I do? 1 second, let me scroll over here. So, this is impromptu. Didn't even expect to have this here, so didn't even occur to me until we do. So what I'm talking about is the box design for Xbox Series L and PlayStation 5 games. So we're talking this kind of box. Yeah, an actual physical media box. That's what we're talking about. Yes, I was watching Seven Samurai. Excellent film, masterpiece, by the way. Fuck you, Ghost of Tsushima. Putting on a black and white filter doesn't change the whole principle of what Kurosawa did with light and shadow and shot around that. Back to the point. So, I still can't believe I'm talking about this one. Anyway, PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series L boxes have been revealed. The PlayStation 5 looks practically exactly the same as the PlayStation 4, as you would expect. It has your big piece of art on the front. It is an overall blue box, but the only main difference is that the trim along the top where it says PlayStation 4 and all is now no longer blue. It is going to be white. It looks ugly if you ask me. If they wanted the white trim, in my opinion, they should have changed it up a little bit and gone with a black box. Oh, but Q, the PlayStation 5 is white. It wouldn't make sense. There's lots of stuff that doesn't make sense. Who cares? It's not even like it's a single marketed design or a brand that going across. It doesn't make sense. Fuck it. Go away from it. Do something better. Now, while the PlayStation 5 looks ugly, you could call it actively ugly and actively offensive, the Xbox Series L is better and worse at the same time. Now, you might be wondering how something can be better and worse at the same time. Well, let me elaborate. The overall design is slightly better, but at the same time, it's messy and it's getting too convoluted. So it is the standard green plastic, like, say, an Xbox One box. It will say Xbox in the plastic at the top in the green, just like Xbox One does now. Then, underneath that, there is a black banner that also says Xbox Series X. I know, that's right. As much as I wish it did say Xbox Series L, unfortunately, the official marketing says Xbox Series X. There's also, in this big black badge, another space that people suspect will also say Xbox Series S. But that's a whole other point. But on top of all of that, despite it saying Xbox at the top, and then Xbox Series X right underneath it, there's also a huge, big, ugly badge on the front, further down the box, that says optimized for Series X. So, we all, in theory, know that if you buy an Xbox Series X game, it should be optimized. It should be programmed and taking advantage of all the power afforded to these new consoles. And are they basically trying to say, no, don't worry, fam, we got you. This title that these companies are trying to make you pay even more money than before, don't worry, fam, we got you. This title isn't a one-to-one port of some last-gen game. Running on 30 FPS on a roll console? No, bro, this one isn't 30 FPS. This one is a solid, not even 60. That's right, it is consistent, not even 60. You want that 892p? No, fam, we got you. We got that dynamic resolution in around the 1624p mark, bro. That's what we got. It's so fucking stupid and it's so fucking convoluted and such an absolute fucking mess. Having said that, though, it is vintage Microsoft marketing at this point. Pretty much everything they've done in the last couple of months for the Xbox Series L has been a bit of a disaster. Pretty much everything they've done has just instantly backfired on them. And this is one of the big problems with supporting Xbox as a transition from Xbox One to the Series L. Cross-generation games that will be factoring in the old hardware and all as well. Absolute mess. Game design that's factoring in all the old hardware. It's an absolute mess. It's an absolute disaster. As soon as they properly, completely, Microsoft and other companies stop including the Xbox One in all of this, the marketing, the messaging, it can all become easier and clearer. PlayStation understands this. Their game just says PlayStation 5. It doesn't say, oh, it's also available on PS4, but it's optimized for PS5 with multiple different marketing brands and marketing materials on it. It's just a load of shit. And Sony have this figured out. Microsoft, as we'll talk about now in a second, clearly haven't. So in relation to marketing, what they have and haven't got figured out and all as well, we're going to borrow a page from Memento right here. And I'm just going to say, when it comes to marketing, don't believe his lies. So don't fall for the hype, don't fall for the marketing scheme, whatever it is, because this time we're back with Phil Spencer. Now, Phil Spencer, of course, is talking about Xbox One, and he is specifically relating Xbox One and Xbox Series L and how holding back next-gen games by factoring in Xbox One's hardware and development and all being a meme, according to him anyway as well. So we do have a quote from Phil, which I will read here. Frankly, held back is a meme that gets created by people who are too caught up in a device competition. Yes, every developer is going to find a line and say that this is the hardware that I am going to support. But the diversity of the hardware choice in PC has not held back highest fidelity PC games on the market. I'm going to interject here for 1 second. That is correct, Phil. Because you know what was holding back PC and all our stuff? Your fucking piece of shit consoles. Anyway, let me find where I was in my notes here. So, the highest fidelity PC games rivaled anything that anyone has ever seen in video games. Yes, that's a terrible quote, Phil. So, this idea that developers don't know how to build games or game engines or ecosystems that work across a set of hardware, there's a proof point in PC that shows that's not the case. This is absolutely 100% false, as everyone already knows, or at least does anyone who knows anything about hardware and game design. You know that this is not the case. There is a scalability window, but you can say, like, obviously the top end is PC, and then in the middle or slightly below it, you have the new hardware like PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series L. And then down at the bottom, you've got Xbox One and low-end piece of shit hardware. But what happens is this window, as vast and wide as it is, you've got highly scalable game engines like ID Tech 6 and ID Tech 7, as much as it kills me to say, the DICE Frostbite engine, stuff like that. You have this big window. Now, unfortunately, the window size is essentially set by the game engine. And when you get to the point where you have to drag the floor down to factor in the low-end Xbox One hardware and stuff like that, it drags the ceiling down with it. So when the ceiling goes up, when the floor goes up, it pushes up the ceiling. When the floor goes down, it drags down the ceiling. That's why we have been complaining for probably about 5 years now on PC that the piece of shit Jaguar, which is literally a piece of shit. Well, I guess I should say it's figuratively a piece of shit, but it is a piece of shit silicon. So you can kind of go 50-50 on it. But the point is that it has held us back in that regard. So it is completely contradicting Phil in that way. Now, just to add a little bit of insult to injury and just say how wrong he is. Developers like Sony developers, third-party people developing for Sony, and even developers making games for the Xbox Series L and PC, stuff that will not be on the PlayStation. Both of these, or all of these, say that it is not like Phil says. And they say that the old hardware, if they were to factor in their game, it could not run on it, or it could not be the vision that they want on the new proper end hardware. You know why? Because it's true, and it will hold stuff back. Everyone knows it at this point, especially if you understand hardware. Horizon Zero Dawn and Guerrilla Games, they couldn't add flying to Horizon Zero Dawn. Why? Because the PS4 hardware was involved. Do you think they'd be able to do that on the PS5 with Horizon 2 if it was a cross-generation game? No, because the PS4 hardware, in this case the hard drive, would not be able to keep up. And remember, on top of all of this, just to add a little bit of extra context as well. This is all from Phil Spencer, someone who you cannot believe in any way, shape, or form, because this is the same person, Phil Spencer, the man who said that at the start of generation, FPS and frame rate, FPS is frame rate, I guess. FPS matters, not resolution. When did they say this and why did they say this? This was back at the start of the generation when Microsoft was losing resolution gate in every way, shape, or form. And then, a few years later, they said resolution mattered, not frame rate. Why? Because Microsoft were technically winning resolution gate because they launched the Xbox One X. And they said that 4K or fake 4K is much, much better than frame rate. Why? Because they were getting slaughtered. And now, of course, they're back to saying that FPS matters, not resolution, when promising 60 and 120 FPS on the Xbox Series L, while at the same time confirming 30 FPS games on next fucking gen. But speaking of lies and incompetence, well, it's Deadly Premonition 2 time, baby. Now, as you would expect, it's an outlaw piece of shit on Switch just because, well, it's a Switch game. It looks like a PS2 game. Unfortunately, it doesn't run like a PS2 game because then it would be 60 FPS because if you don't remember, it's only a bit more recently in the 7th and 8th generation, and unfortunately probably going into the 9th where the FPS tanked. Yeah, everything before that was designed around 60 FPS, unless you were in an N64 game, but hell, that's Nintendo incompetence yet again. Anyway, back to the point here. So, it's an outlaw mud show development piece of shit game when it comes to frame rate. It's all over the place under 30 FPS. It doesn't break 30 FPS. It's just a complete, utter, juddery shit show. Now, on top of all of that, what's especially funny is that Swery, who is the developer, the main top end or top director developer and all of the studio behind it, he even started retweeting everyone and the people and all as well who were unhappy with the performance and started calling them frame rate trolls. Now, remember, this is how the director of the game views you, a paying customer who is unhappy with the product that he provided you. Remember, that's how he views you if you are unhappy about it, for a legitimate concern, but from a game that is failing to hit even half. In fact, it's running at roughly 1/3 of the dedicated 40-ish year old standard of games. Well, apparently that makes you a frame rate troll. But then he had to double back because he's a fucking hack and he's a fucking incompetent lying cunt. So, the PR for the studio, the public relations, they came out and eventually there was mixed messaging behind all of this, but apparently they came out and said we will be trying to look into ways to fix this and improve the frame rate. And of course, remember, in summary, Swery is even more of a piece of shit because of all of that. But hey, what can I say? Clearly, he is in the wrong because he's a cunt. It's basically that easy. But hey, what did you expect? It's a fucking Switch game. Outlaw. But anyway, let's wrap this bitch up. We have one quick little topic before we get to our real main final topic, and then we outie 5000G. Anyway, we have the upcoming Xbox conference. Now, this one is going to air on July 23rd. It will be live streamed, and the most important thing is what they're going to show. After the completely disastrous next-gen showcase and first next-gen gameplay showcase that they had back in May, which was a complete fucking disaster, well, Microsoft have said that their big first-party one is going to be in July. And of course, I do want to take this point up to point out the fact that they had said that there was going to be something every single month starting in May. And there was seemingly nothing in June. Yikes. Anyway, back to the point here. So what is going to be happening in this big July showcase? This is the big one where Microsoft said they will be showing off many of their first-party titles that will be coming to the Xbox Series L. So it will basically be a first-party showcase, which includes next-generation gameplay, hopefully better than what we've seen before. But there is also unofficial talk as well that I've seen, at least anyway. There may be an official confirmation or official disavowing of this, but apparently there will also be a selection of third-party next-generation games in there too. We will likely have some proper next-generation new game announcements. Fable is a big one in there. I don't really care about that. Again, Perfect Dark is another big one in there. I would be more interested in that, but I do expect to see some new IPs, some new game announcements and all as well from Microsoft and their first party, even if it includes new games in existing IPs and series, or if it's just something completely new and different. Just please don't be another Sea of Thieves or Grounded or State of Decay. But you see my point here as well. But on top of all of this, oh, by the way, unfortunately, I most likely won't be streaming this because it is in the middle of the day and I am an adult human with a job. But possibly, no, you know, not even possibly. Most importantly for this entire thing, this entire July 23rd presentation and stream, they will be showing Halo Infinite campaign. Hopefully it's gameplay as well. But they will be showing off the Halo Infinite campaign. I am so excited for that. I really hope and pray it doesn't turn out to be a Destiny clone. But hey, what do I know? We just have to wait and see. Anyway, that's it. We can roll on to our final little what am I playing Q. What's up? What's going down? What's the dealio? What is blah, blah, blah? Because we will cut it short and sweet because there is only one simple answer to the question. What am I playing this week? And frankly, it's one simple thing. Metroid Prime. That's it. That is all I have been playing for the last few days. Metroid Prime. And that's it. In fact, I don't think I have another new game to play until the end of next month, the end of August, when Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remaster launches. But that is basically it. Metroid Prime is all I'm playing. I love it. It's so great. I can't even remember why I stopped. I have reason to believe I am close enough to the end, because when you look at the map, you can see how big the map is, you can see what items you need to unlock doors and stuff like that, and there's basically only two main items that I can think of that I'm missing. Again, I don't know the entire thing there, but I have a feeling I'm a pretty solid way through the game. It's great in the sense of the old school exploration and all as well. It's a bit more logical than Super Metroid. Again, Super Metroid is a fucking amazing game, but it is a bit more logical than Super Metroid. I guess maybe the fact that it's in 3D and the graphics will allow so. But when you would take Super Metroid into consideration, even as great as it was, I have to admit, some of it was illogical and kind of questionable. But anyway, Metroid Prime will be completed. I'm hoping to go on to Metroid Prime 2 and maybe even Corruption after it. I do have to talk about that in a little video before I even start Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, but that's a whole other topic. But anyway, until then, of course, let me know in the comment section below. By the way, also, thank you for sticking with me through all of this glorious little exposition that I do every single weekend. Anyway, comment section below, you know the drill. Thoughts, feelings, questions, opinions, butthurt, salt, praise, whatever it is, feel free to drop it on in there below. Anyway, until then, feel free to hit the appropriate button to let me know how I did on the video, and while you're at it, why not head on over and hit the subscribe button and even ring the little notification bell, because naturally, you want to be one of the first people to don your little safety mask and check out one of these glorious little episodes whenever it gets uploaded in high production, high amazing quality every single weekend. So of course, I will see everyone next week, and remember, winners don't play switch ports.